Welcome, everyone. Kindly take your seats. So just before the live stream kicks in, which should be literally now, and by the way, I'm not your host. Don't want to let anybody down today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here at News UK. I saw lots of you taking photos already, so I think you've already had a good look at the view. I think we can all say it's a pretty fabulous space. Sorry for those of you watching at home on the live stream, you missed out on the view. Perhaps you can join us here in person next time. So yes, a huge thank you to you all for clearing your very busy diaries this afternoon to join us for this very special event to mark International Women's Day. Whether you're here in person or joining us indeed on that live stream, you're all very welcome indeed. So my name is Hannah Previtt. I'm a business journalist for The Times and The Sunday Times, and I'm delighted to be your host this afternoon. And up and down the country, and indeed internationally, organisations are celebrating International Women's Day this week, the theme of which this year is Inspire Inclusion. And as Times journalists, we get inundated both with press releases and invites all about International Women's Day, and businesses clamour to shout about how much they value women. However, as a cynical journalist, what I'm really interested in is not the shiny hashtag IWD posts on social media, but how they really value women in practice. So what does their gender pay gap look like? How many women-owned businesses do they work with in their supply chain? Do they strive to create products and services for women? And what are their parental leave policies? These are the things that I really want to know about. And I'd much rather attend events and indeed host them where it's as much about action as it is about talking. Which brings me on to MediaTechWomen, which falls firmly into the latter camp. And MediaTechWomen really is a special, groundbreaking collaboration with a unique purpose. It brings together the tech women at Sky, News UK, and the BBC, who work at the cutting edge of where big media and technology intersect. And it's organised by amazing women in your tech networks, especially for you. So huge credit to the organisers who have put so much work into making this happen over the last couple of months. And I can tell you it's no small feat to pull together an event of this scale and quality. So well done to all of you. And I know we'll return to this a bit later on to thank you properly. So to get the most out of today's event, I'd like to suggest three things. So firstly, I think the best events are the ones that are the most collaborative, and we really do want to hear from you today. So today we're using Slido. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. You can see a QR code on the screen now, or you can put Slido into your internet browser and add the hashtag MediaTechWomen. And here you can post your questions, comments, and participate in our polls. Secondly, please feel free to share highlights on social media, hopefully of the content, not just the view, by using the hashtag MediaTechWomen. Thirdly, and I do feel strongly about this, please don't leave without making at least one new connection today. Networking or building and maintaining relationships has made a huge difference to my career and continues to be the way that I get most of my stories. But I'll let you in on a secret. I don't always like it. And frankly, sometimes I don't want to be in that room. And a few weeks ago, I went to Mansion House to go to an event, which was, I would say, 80% white, middle-aged men. And I had to get a story and go back and write it up. And I'd been up half the night with my 4-year-old, and I was thinking, what am I doing in this room? I don't want to talk to any of these blokes. We've all been there, right? I'm seeing nods of recognition around the room. But, you know, I got stuck in, I got the story, I got the job done. And in fact, I found some common ground in the loos with lots of ladies saying exactly the same thing, that it was awful that this room was full of all these boring old men. So I think I've made some friends for life there. So don't just take it from me either. This whole collaboration came about because the founders met at an event, and now they've founded this amazing collaboration. So last point, and more for our live stream audience, if you experience any technical difficulties, which I'm sure you won't, please contact MediaTechWomen at news.co.uk, and they will be able to assist you. Now, I'm going to invite our guests for our first panel to please make your way up to the stage. And whilst they're coming up, let's make sure you're still awake and with us. Let's get on to our first poll. So you can find this on slido.com, or if you've already downloaded it. Not all apps or web products are built equally. And laying aside usability for a moment, how recently can you recall feeling miffed or by the use of kind of archaic genders references, or perhaps you could not find your skin tone, etc., etc. So with that in mind, we ask this question. Are organizations doing enough to build products with diversity in mind? So, okay, so we can see that loading up on the screen, and we'll pick it up in just a moment. So thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by this cast of experts now. So I will introduce them to you one by one. So to my left, we have Storm Fagan, who is Chief Product Officer at the BBC. Then we have our very own Claire Draycott, who's Director of Innovation at News UK. And last but no means least, Alex Pride, Director of Central Services for Sky and NBC Universal. So I thought it would be good to get a view on these amazing women's careers, just a really kind of potted history. I can see we have a great diversity of kind of age and experience in this room, but we all get to our, kind of positions via different journeys. So I think it's really good just to have a snapshot of that. And I'm going to break convention and start with you, Claire, because you're right in the middle. So just tell us how you got to this incredible job you're in now.
Sure. So my background is all design and user experience. And I studied that at university, and I did a very small stint at Condé Nast, but then I started here 12 years ago as an apprentice. And I have always worked within technology, but I very much spent a good year of my time here sort of going around various different teams, really getting to know technology and the stakeholders before I found my role within design. And then I've spent a good decade kind of heading up a lot of the design teams. And then I found this innovation role about 14 months ago.
Okay, thank you very much. Alex, would you like to go next?
Hi, yes, I'm a physicist by, well, I'd say training, but by birth. Both my parents are physicists. It was the family industry. After I did my PhD, I went to join consulting firm McKinsey, which was a brilliant training in business. My real passion, though, was broadcasting and radio in particular. So after I did the business analyst training program at McKinsey, I stepped into the media sector properly, first into radio. I joined the BBC. I had 12 wonderful years there, ultimately leading digital switchover and the conversion to HD channels. I turned off the BBC's last analog TV signal.
Wow.
And it clunked. And then after the BBC, I had a couple of years running innovation at Vodafone before I got the offer to join Sky, where I've been for about 8 years. And since we merged as part of the Comcast organisation, I now have a really exciting brief that spans NBC Universal as well as Sky, so bringing together two great organisations.
Very kind of global in nature, I'm sure. And Storms, why don't you tell us a bit about your background? And what I find fascinating is that you've all come from slightly different avenues. So you're from the startup world, aren't you?
I am. So I left, did a business degree, which is the classic, don't know what you want to do. So I'm going to defer that for 4 years. And then I joined a digital consultancy. So it was like quite fast paced, and I got to do coding and UX and project management and product management, and just loved all of it. So was determined to spend my career in tech. Then I moved into publishing, worked in some startups, and then worked at Just Eat, which kind of went from IPO through to FTSE 20. So that was an amazing kind of growth story. And now I'm at the BBC, where I'm heading up the digital products. So quite a squiggle. It's really interesting listening to like the squiggly careers.
Yeah. And so let's dive straight into the topic that we're here to discuss. And let's start with a really broad question. So why does it matter? I mean, it sounds like a stupid question, but we still have to ask them. So why does it matter? Why do we need to build products that are inclusive at their heart? Storm, I'll come to you first. Is it just about making more money?
Well, no. I think it's about the really understanding your user base. So I have a sort of great story from Just Eat that still stays with me now, that when I joined Just Eat, it was a very small startup, and I joined and it was a room full of young, mostly white men who were building an app that they wanted to use when they left the pub on a Friday night, and they wanted to order a pizza or a kebab and go home. And when I joined, having done design and everything, I was like, right, the first thing we need to do is find out who actually uses our products beyond the people who work here. And we did some user research, and it came back that it was mostly women in their 30s who got to the end of the working week and didn't want to cook on a Friday night. They wanted a night off. And I printed that out, the survey results, and we got some verbatim comments back, and there was one that just really stood out to me, which was this woman said, I know this product's not for me, but I use it anyway. I hope that's okay. And I printed it out in like letters this high, stuck it up in the office. And I was like, you're not making an app for you guys, you're making an app for this woman and all the other women like her. So I think if you don't have that diversity in the creation of the product, you're missing out on opportunities. But secondly, you're not creating the best experience that you can, because you're really just having sort of tunnel vision about what's possible.
Mm-hmm. And in some cases, it's also about shoring up the future of the organisation, isn't it? Claire, we were talking earlier about Times readers, and we don't want to generalise, of course, but for example, our print subscribers tend to be older men, right?
Yeah.
If you kind of lump them all together. But we want to move past that, so we need to make products for the audience of the future.
Yeah, I think that our average age is about, I think it's like the 50-ish-year-old, like white male. But really, it took us a while to get to a point within the design team where we were actually user-focused. So sort of to your point, we really went out, we got to know our users, the behaviours, and yes, 60-70% might be that persona, but actually there's tons of others that we need to be factoring in. And actually it now comes to the point where we can reach more people. We want to target more of these people. What are their needs? What are their wants? And how can we do that through designing and building the correct product?
Mm-hmm. And how about, what does it mean to you, Alex? As you said before, you have kind of a global role, so it's even more challenging, because what your audience wants here in the UK might be very different to what they want across the pond. So building inclusive products that work in that global market must be really challenging.
So the global challenge has been a really exciting stretch for us in recent years. So I work on the streaming products, and we started 12 years ago, I think now, with Now TV, probably familiar with, in some countries in Europe. And then 4 years ago, we launched that technology platform as Peacock in the US, and it's now over 30 million subscribers. Just broke the internet in a good way, without breaking the internet, with a massive NFL match that Taylor Swift turned up to, so that added another 10% just in January. Biggest streaming event in US history, and the app was robust. So you sort of engineer for general thing, peaky audiences and large audiences, but we've also taken that underlying platform and the app, the front end, and we've syndicated that. We've worked with other partners to expand into other territories. So we launched last year into 22 countries across Europe with Sky Showtime. And then really excitingly, this January, on one day, we launched in 44 countries into Africa. Wow. What's amazing about Africa, and people sometimes call it the African market, and that's a real misnomer, because Africa, as I'm sure you know, is the most diverse continent on the planet. And to be in 44 countries, you can't just take your European via US app and expect it to be right for those audiences. So we spend a lot of time researching, understanding the African market, working with our partner MultiChoice Group, who are Africa's leading ents company. And we had to take into account things like connectivity is improving in Africa, but it's not always reliable. There can be power cuts. So you want to make sure your app works really well on low bandwidth. It's really reliable. Some people can't afford the data, want to be very cautious about the data, and that's actually true in all markets, isn't it? So we built a new feature called data savings that allows you to make to dial down the video quality if you want for your viewing, so that you're using less data at that point. Cache is important. Cache is really popular. So how do we adapt our app to be able to manage cache payments? Multiple languages for the same sports event. So we built all of these features to make sure our app was going to be right for customers across Africa. And guess what? We've made a better product, and we've made a better product for those European customers and those American customers now, who will be able to use the data savings, who have an app that's more robust if they get into a patchy signal area, who can now enjoy multiple language commentary on sports events and so on. So by being curious about what your customers really need, and then challenging yourself, really courageous innovation to adapt and be restless about how you rise to that challenge, you do a better product for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to just draw the poll results back up now, because I think it's really interesting to look back historically. So what you've described there, Alex, it sounds like you're at the kind of forefront of innovation when it comes to being inclusive and creating products for people that work around the world in all these different markets. But I wonder if it would have been the case 5 years ago. So if we look at this, I think we can see that there's very much still an issue, right? So only 5% feel that products are designed with diversity in mind. That's shocking, isn't it, Storm? Like, does that surprise you, or do you think it's indicative of what we see out there in the world?
I'd like to say I'm surprised, but I don't think there's anyone that would be surprised by that. It's disappointing, really, isn't it? I think we've come a really long way in terms of the number of women who are working in STEM industries, but we haven't gone far enough. And I feel like we're still in the foothills of that. Like, we've built the numbers up, which is wonderful. And I worry a little bit sometimes that feels like a bit of a tick box. Or we've done it now. There's lots of women now. It's fine. And actually, it's much more cultural than that, right? In terms of how you think about your product development, how you do your user research, how you're sort of tailoring those features to the audiences, and that move to being like really user-centered is part of it. So there's one thing about like the number of women. There's another thing about the sort of culture and best practices as well that are needed to kind of back that up. I think there's a really long way to go still.
And so how do you do it? So if there's people in the room who are hoping to get some kind of tips of how you can make this very kind of collaborative, inclusive approach to innovation happen. You mentioned there about kind of having the women and other, ethnic minority groups. We were talking before about people from different socio-economic backgrounds, because obviously that's one of the things leveled against the media, right? Is that they think that we're all middle-class poshos. So Claire, how do you make sure that you get all the right people in the room? And once they're in the room, how do you work out what to do with them and make sure you're drawing in the quieter ones and you're kind of managing that? Because obviously getting lots of differences of opinion, as I can tell you being up on this stage, it's hard to manage sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, one of the big things is making sure that you start with a team that is diverse. And I think when I was building this team 14 months ago, that was definitely something that I wanted to make sure that I sort of nailed, so that it would be as creative as it could be. How we've mainly done it is, obviously it starts with recruitment, but really making sure that sort of, I think in tech, we're now about 37% female-male split. So making sure that of the CVs that we receive, we are receiving a third that are women, and if there's not, actually going back and having that pushback, why aren't women applying? So making sure within recruitment we're sort of nailing that, but then also within the day-to-day, I've got a whole range of different people within the team, making sure that I am hearing the right voices. And the main things I do with that is making sure it's sort of active listening, people get their time to actually talk without being interrupted, and making sure that I call out if that does actually happen. But also allowing people to work in different ways. So when people want to feedback or challenge, they don't have to do it right then and there on the spot. Like for me, I know how I work is I will quite often hear some information. I might want to just think about it for a while and then go back to my boss or whoever and say, this is what I think we should do. So actually just giving people different forums or channels and multiple opportunities to raise their voice and have their voice heard, I think is important.
And Alex, have you got anything you'd like to add in terms of kind of building a diverse team? But then it's also about retaining them, isn't it? And I think there's some data I'm going to share a bit later that shows that we have lots of women going in at the kind of entry level, but by the time it gets to the senior ranks, you know, this panel can be misleading because obviously you're all doing super well, but that's not representative across technology more widely, is it? Once you get to the senior levels.
So it's something we have a big program with the BBC and colleagues I work with on that about this sort of attract, develop, retain. So, you know, you want to bring your women in terms of gender and technology and give them opportunities to progress and then retain. And I think a big part of the retaining is, you know, we all, human animals, want to feel like we belong. And it's about being able to find ways to make those connections, feel you can bring your authentic self to work. We do a lot of work in the Sky as a whole. We're very keen to survey if people feel they can bring their authentic self to work. And it can be really small things that can be sort of alienating for people in that. And I remember, I know we first met a few years ago, connected with a Management Today event. And I, as part of that, got to be in a photo shoot. Very exciting, whole newfound respect for models, really hard concentration. But I got to talk to some other women who were working in other sectors. And you could feel it was little things like meetings at 8 a.m. Now, I was at the BBC at that point, and we didn't really, you wouldn't put a meeting in before 9:30, you know, and there were a lot of brilliant female representation right up to the, you know, the exec board, running TV, running radio, finance, strategy, whereas the men were running HR and marketing. But little things like a culture in the supermarket industry, and it's also true in the sort of telco industry as well, this habit of men just starting the day early and getting on. And when you bear in mind how there is a disproportionate childcare element that goes towards women in the school run, that was a sort of unconscious bias that was going on. Now, one of the things that's come out of COVID actually is statistics the ONS published, a massive shift in the number of men sharing that sort of childcare and the school run and so on. But there's little things like that can unintentionally, it's just they're not thinking. So it's being curious, it's understanding, it's spotting things and finding out what can make the place more.
But I think it's also us being able to push back. Like if we are on the nursery run or whatever, being able to say, I'm on the nursery run and this is fine. We do this meeting in an hour's time or whatever.
Yeah, and I was with the CEO of a global architecture firm earlier, and she was saying that's how she works, right? She runs a $500 million company, and she was saying the only way it's worked is by time management, which sounds like such a small thing, but also protecting her time when she's with her family, and making sure she has some downtime, and then using the hours. She said, "You won't ever catch me like having a catch up over a cup of tea in the canteen for an hour," which sounds a bit sad maybe, but I take her point. And so moving on to kind of forward looking, so let's look into our crystal balls about kind of technologies coming down the line. We talked before about the advent of kind of AI and machine learning, which is obviously very exciting on one hand, but equally, I mean, it can't escape the notice of anybody in this room. Every time you see an AI event, they're full of men. It's like there's no women who work in the field of AI at all if you look on LinkedIn. So this kind of new frontier of technologies, is it going to help when it comes to diversity and inclusion in tech and innovation? Or do we need to make sure that we kind of marry that with interpersonal skills? So Claire, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we?
Yeah, I think I'm almost in two minds of it. Like, I think it could actually massively help in some way, because you are creating tech that will reach so many more people. And one thing that's quite close to me is accessibility. So if someone's deaf, blind, whatever it might be, they have a disability of some kind, this tech enables us to reach these people a lot easier. So even tools like text to speech that can just be done sort of within seconds now, you're suddenly unlocking it to a whole new target audience that we should have been designing for anyway, but it was never as easy. So I think there are lots of positives. I think also you can personalize experience. I've always had a thing where we shouldn't be designing just one experience, because everyone in this room is completely different. So being able to use AI to better personalize experiences, so it's exactly what you want, exactly what I want. So I think I'm trying to see it really positively, but obviously there is a massive worry about the models that are being put out there and the biases that they might have. And just making sure that as kind of companies, we really are staying on top of that. We're sort of tracking what's coming out, how we're actually using it, the type of use cases that we are using AI to build on. So yeah, I'm a bit kind of torn with that.
And Storm, I want to get your view, but I just want to remind the audience that you can put your questions into Slido. So I don't want to hog the limelight. If you've got some burning questions, please do ask them, and Emily's going to help us navigate that in just a moment. But Storm, do you agree? I know when we spoke before on the call, we were talking about AI and all of the inherent biases, and in some ways it's worse than the rooms full of old white men, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I agree with you. Like, the potential is so positive and so massive, but where we are now feels quite uncomfortable, if I'm honest, for a couple of reasons. One, because of those biases in the large language models, and I think that when you look at then what people are worried about, if you sort of go out and speak to people, they're worried about that Terminator future where the robots are going to come and take over, and actually that's a really long way away and probably never going to happen. The actual problem right now is what you're talking about, which is those biases and the impact of that.
Yeah.
And then the second part of it is then there's the sort of narrative and storytelling around who the experts are, like you said, and it's very much, there is this sort of stereotype of like a scruffy white man, boy genius, you know, and that's the person that can develop this technology.
Right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. And then one, it completely negates the impact that women have made in this field. But I think secondly, what it does is when you're then speaking to people who don't work in tech, it feels very exclusionary, that it feels like this is not a technology that I can engage with. You know, if I speak to people that aren't sort of working in this field, and that has an inherent risk as well, because then people are nervous or scared to play around with these things. And then as it sort of scales out, more people use it, there's going to be this kind of, there's going to be people left behind. So I think it's on us, one, to sort of make sure that we're appropriately using it and managing those short-term risks. And secondly, to really fight against that stereotype. As women in tech, it's our job to make sure that we're breaking those stereotypical, those boundaries. I feel very strongly about that.
I sense that, and I can see Alex nodding along with you.
Yeah.
Do you share the same view?
I just think bang on in terms of the optimism about the future and just that caution right now. And I think the digital divide point's really well made. I think, you know, it's hard to see how that doesn't sort of grow bigger. And as you say, I think in some ways it holds a mirror up to us and the biases that are already out there. And if you look first at things like facial recognition, and it's sort of well known that the original facial recognition models were trained on typically white male faces, but European-based faces, and doing a really poor job with whole loads of horrible consequences in recognising people of a wider ethnic diversity. So really important that that's moved on. But you then come to Gen AI and large language models, it is holding up a mirror of what it finds on the internet. And that is a place that you do not expose people unfiltered. And I had a lovely example where we're excited about innovation. So we're doing a Gen AI hackathon next month in our organisation, our streaming org. Wouldn't it be cool to make the video to promote our hackathon by doing a text to video model? So Sora has just been announced but not available, so we use something else. And my friend went, right, okay, give it this prompt. So get some geeks doing a hackathon. And it gave out this lovely picture, really high energy of people on computers looking very excited about what they were doing. White men's glasses, every single one. It was hilarious. It was with some diversity in the prompt, and they added a woman. White in glasses. So there's a lot of, there's the sort of, the human intelligence has to be layered on top, and human intelligence that is sensitive to the wonderful diversity and range of human people that go into making brilliant products and consuming those products.
And so last question from me before we go to Emily's questions from the floor. How do we know if we're getting this stuff right? Is it as simple as the kind of proof is in the pudding or the product in this case? Do you have kind of KPIs that you measure against in terms of making sure that your products are really inclusive and targeted as wide an audience as possible? How do you do that? Is it something that's kind of on your watch, Storm?
Yeah, totally. And I think we have a luxury in the BBC because we are funded by the licence fee, and because we have our charter that's quite clear about the fact that we need to be universal. That really drives a certain type of culture. So we're measuring the sort of hard KPIs, and then we're really focused on things like accessibility, on things like inclusivity. And I think we get to look in that space in a way that maybe some commercial organisations don't. But absolutely, you can't just look at the growth, because that's when you accidentally end up in a position maybe you didn't want to be in. You also have to look at the smaller user groups or the particular edge cases, and how do you cater for them?
Do you think there's also kind of, with the advent of social media, that organisations like the BBC, who sometimes gets a hard time on social media, will be called out basically if you get this stuff wrong?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's good though, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know, don't ask me. Is it good?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think just as people, right, we should be able to, I think that's the wonderful thing about the internet, is like, it sort of brings people together. It sort of creates a level playing field where you can tweet at, well, it's not tweet anymore, is it? But you can speak to any politician, right, or any brand. And I think that's a really good thing. I think holding companies and organisations to account is a positive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how about here at News? Obviously, as a journalist here, I have certain insight into it and my stories. We have this data tool, right, called Inca, so we can see how our stories perform. And there'll be people in this room who know much more about this than me. But just to give you the idiot's guide, I can see how any story gets a score of 1 to 5. 3, if you're getting anything lower than a 3, you probably need to be worried about your performance review. And then it's also broken down by categories. So there'll be female readers, younger readers, and a global audience, because we know that they're target demographics for us, right? And I write lots of stories about female founders and founders from ethnic minority backgrounds. So I keep a close eye on some of those kind of subsets to make sure that I'm speaking to that audience and writing stories that work for them.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's much more complex than that behind the scenes.
It's fairly similar, really. So we basically can just benchmark a lot of our work. So obviously you have all the data, the usage, you can cut it down by customer. But then we also have some amazing researchers who will go out and actually do a lot of benchmarking. So they can say how we were performing, how we might have increased over time in terms of like satisfaction score. So that's mainly how we do it. We have built up amazing panels of customers as well, so that we can make sure we are really reaching the correct customer and the right sets of people. And we have that for all of our different titles. So yeah, we've just got tons of feedback coming in, really.
Okay, lots of feedback. It's good.
Yeah,
it's good to have feedback. And Alex, how about you? And you've given a few really good examples of kind of amazing products that you've created. But aside from that, how do you measure this stuff?
So, conscious of time, so I'll just give a brief example of a really important feedback channel for us at Sky is our customer service team. So I originally joined Sky in the customer service group, a phenomenal team that we try to look after really well, because we look after them, they'll look after our customers, and that helps the business exist. And they are never timed on, average handling time of a call, because actually what you want them to do is have the right conversation and progress to a fix, or picking up these issues. And they're a brilliant way of us getting direct feedback from our customers about how things are going. And as we've been through the cost of living crisis, it's been a really valuable barometer about, the kinds of trade-offs people are having to make in their lives between the services they want and the other choices in their lives. So having a really listening to your people who are directly listening to your customers is a really important channel for us.
Really useful. Emily, can I ask you to share some questions with us? Like, what's the vibe coming in from our audience in terms of questions?
Well, the vibe is lots of interest. They're flooding in thick and fast. I'd say there are some themes coming in. One is people are very interested in any particular barriers you've had, the panels had in their own careers, that they've had to overcome, barriers to women.
Mm-hmm.
That's one theme. There's a lot on diversity. Diversity on panels, diversity in the workplace, diversity in age, all of that within the tech business. So that's another thing to address. And also, actually, a really interesting theme about leadership. You know, do women sort of make different leaders, better leaders, or is it harder for them to get attention because they have a different style of leadership? So I'd say those are the main ones. I mean, there's a lot coming in, but we've only got about 5 minutes.
Yeah, so let's take one of those. Who would like to take the barriers question? Have any of you experienced any?
Sorry, I'm like, has anybody not experienced any barriers? I think we all have, haven't we? I mean, I'm sort of looking to the audience, like there's been plenty of times I've been the only woman in the room, the only woman in a team. Makes it hard, doesn't it?
Let's ask, right? By show of hands, who feels like they've experienced barriers at work because of their gender?
Yeah.
We've got some work to do here, Zing. But that's extraordinary, isn't it? And to say, how do you, and one of the questions that often comes up is like, how do you bounce back from that? Like, how do you deal with that? Because clearly you've got to where you are today. How do you rise above it?
It's really hard. It's like you're saying, sometimes you're on the school run and everyone else is in a meeting and you just can't do it because you have to get your kids to nursery or to school. And it takes a lot of resilience and stubbornness, I think. And I think now that I've got to this point in my career, maybe this sort of speaks to some of the leadership piece. I don't want the women coming up sort of in my org to feel some of those barriers. I feel really strongly that our job is to like pay that forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think also for me, by like these barriers, you can overcome them by being sort of strong, resilient as much as you can. But I think also it sort of chimes back to what you were saying about networking and building a solid support group at work. I think, and that might be 2-3 people, but just people that almost like represent you or are going through similar things. That they don't have to be in the team or even people that you work with day to day, but just being able to have that kind of safety net, I guess, to actually talk things through, I think can help.
Mm-hmm. And last word perhaps to you, Alex, so no pressure, but on the leadership question of whether, you know, women make better leaders or perhaps the kind of leader that you are, and how do you feel about that kind of paying it forward and kind of not, you know, that classic not pulling the ladder up behind you, making sure you help other women to follow in your footsteps?
The famous Madeleine Albright quote on that. No, I think there's a really lovely thing on LinkedIn this week by Lisa McGarren, who was at Sky. She's now CEO of Pets at Home. She's written a beautiful piece for International Women's Day about, you know, going through similar eras as me, through her this sort of leadership journey where it's walking the balance between you. On the one hand, you're wanting to be accepted and belong, but then how you retain your authentic self and your femininity with that, whatever that means to you, and being, you know, I've worked for some of the best leaders I've worked for being women, and they've been able to combine this sort of authority, but with warmth and humour, as well as obviously intelligence. And what gives me hope for the future is I look at my daughter, who's 14, and her peer group, and I just see they're going to take on the world, and no one's going to stop them. And I think it's just how you want to sort of protect that and make sure that that goes through to the future. So paying it forward to the next generation, as well as the people more close to you at work too.
Wow, I think I'm welling up here. But no, that's an amazing note to end on. Thank you so much, Alex, Claire, Storm. Thank you so much for your contributions. Yeah, please give them a round of applause. So, as if that wasn't enough inspiration, we now have an incredible lady who's our guest speaker and is going to blow your socks off, right, Suki? So Suki Fuller worked as an intelligence advisor, for nearly 2 decades in areas such as chemical engineering, security, and privacy. She worked globally in the Middle East, in China, the US, and the EU within academia, national security, law enforcement, and private corporations, and also served 12 years in the US Army Reserves. I feel exhausted just listening to this list of incredible achievements. And she's now an author, international keynote speaker and wears so many different hats. And you now reside in London, or near London, as discussed earlier, where she is a very important part of the tech community. And just last year, in 2023, she was named by Computer Weekly as the most influential woman in UK tech. That is quite an accolade. Please welcome to the stage, Suki Fuller.
Okay, I'm not going to stand behind this because then you can't see me, because I am, even though I have the American accent, and it's really a mixture of British American. So as I was going to say, I'm proper short. So I have these notes here, and every time I get up to speak, I go, oh, I'm going to use my notes. I'm going to use my notes. But I'll probably just refer to them. So excuse me if occasionally I just kind of go like this. Because I am also proper blind. And even these contact lenses are not helping me right now. But that's, by the by. And, if you're going to take pictures, tell me, so then I'll stand this way and you have to come over here because the light behind me just doesn't work for brown faces. This is also one of those things when we talk about technology, how people don't build things for people that are slightly brown because, they never have them on their teams. And that's really about somewhat of the theme of what the ladies on the panel were talking about, how the first people in a room building a product are not ever us. It's always, no offense, men watching, men in the room, those that identify as men. Okay, it's never us. It's usually we're added as an afterthought. And that's what a little bit of what I'm going to talk about with the Sukiness. Last night I was at an event and I was given a key word, just one word, and I was asked to speak about it, and it was failure. The person before me was asked to speak about imposter. And she said in order to banish her imposter, she would call it another name. She gave a name to her imposter syndrome. And whenever it started to come in, she'd say, go away. And I thought about that. And then I realized, for me, my imposter is actually Suki. And I've had this persona Sukiness, which was actually given to me by, I'm going to have to give him credit, my white German partner. So, it's a white man. It's like, man, I can't even have this. But, hey, I'll give him the credit because he did start the Sukiness, but it was really the Sukiness as, whatever Her Royal Highness the Sukiness wants. And I was like, you know what? I'm owning that. And I realized Sukiness is actually me. It's me. It's the person who has, as a child, been in all these rooms where I'm always usually the only woman, and then I'm usually the only woman of color. But the Sukiness is that person that I am when I step in a room, and it's ultimately me. It's not somebody else. That's not my imposter. My imposter is Suki that's just walking around and not really owning everything that I've done, everything that means that I am inclusive. I am in all of those rooms. We all are in all of those rooms. We just feel like we're being excluded because we're in a room and it's all men and we're the only woman. But guess what? We're actually the most included, not excluded in that room, because we intersect so many different areas. So me, started out in chemical engineering, didn't like that. One, I probably glow in the dark. It just hasn't happened yet. But sucking in carcinogens for 4 years, probably not good for me. But everything that's shiny in this room, I know how to make it. Everything that's on an airplane, Harley Davidson Chrome, I know how to make it. And guess what? Your average guy, when I go into a room and it's just tech, UX, UI, whatever, they don't know how to do that. I actually know how that battery pack is made. I know all about the mining and ores that go into making batteries. I know everything too much about lithium. They don't know that. They're not thinking about their supply chain when they are actually building their product. They refer to the cloud as the cloud. It's a building. The cloud is a building. It's not just out there in the middle of nowhere. It's actually housed in a physical building. And I think people need to remember that when you are doing something, there's so many different aspects of you that make you included, not excluded. I think we need to change the mindset of how we think about being included and how we inspire others in the room. It's not about us going, we're the only one. It's us going, we are the one. Because we bring much more to the conversation than somebody who's in a room that is the same as everybody else. That difference is what makes you special. That difference is what makes the difference when they go to sell a product. Just Eat. Guess what? It's not for guys. That's what makes the difference. That is the USP. You are that. So I don't want anybody to ever say they feel excluded. There's none of that anymore. We're done with that, okay? Don't want to hear that on the way out. My mouth is really dry. I won't drink the water, though. I'll just keep talking. I do it like a running dialogue, I will tell you. It's better than standing up here and going, you know, I will tell you, I will explain what's going on. So, referring to my notes, there was this conversation that I had with Zing about languages. And it was about feeling like you're excluded because you're in a room and everybody's speaking another language and you do not understand. That is how you explain exclusion to people that don't understand. You don't understand what's being said, but guess what? Just because you don't understand what's being said doesn't mean that you're not important in that room. There are things and nuances that you pick up in the room because you don't understand the language that those that do will just not even notice. That is why people that immigrate to other countries are really great communicators. One, they speak another language. So ultimately, they are technically smarter than you. It's one of those things people seem to miss. Oh, you're an immigrant. Oh, you don't know how to speak English. They speak English and another language. That right there is a skill that not very many people have, especially if you're American. But, you know, that's a whole nother story. I was actually born in Balham, so, you know, South London. But what's really important about that is the fact that we always seem to think that when we're in those rooms and we don't speak that other language, that we have nothing to offer. When in fact we do. We understand body language. We understand eye contact. We understand the little nuances, those little things that people do. Shifting, the way somebody will put their hands in their pocket, the way they will shrug their shoulders, the way they will or won't look at you. Those are little cues that women, especially, we have those down to a fine art. And that is because we have been in those rooms where people may not have been speaking a physical other language, and not verbally speaking another language, but they have essentially been speaking another language and just ignoring us because we are the only one in that room. But it doesn't mean that we're excluded. It means that we're in that room, we know what you're saying, and we know what we're saying. We're always in that main circle. We are always in the Venn diagram. We think we're not in there, but we're in there because our whole lives, our whole existence, we've been programmed to be in that circle. But we're also in all these other ones. We're in the one where we're a Black woman. We're in the one where we're an engineer. We're in the other one where we're a military veteran. We're in the other one where we're a mother. We're in the other one where we're a sister. And all those people, no offense, men, I'm not putting you down. I mean, come on, I have a white guy partner. You know, I do that when I'm at home. But the fact of the matter is, that main circle, everything has been built for that main circle. And they only know one way. That is the way that they've built the entire world just for them. And we've had to exist in that, and we've had to exist in ours. So we're the real experts. I'm totally diverse from what I was going to say, because I'm just like, look, y'all need to hear, we are the experts in the world. We don't need to be empowered. We have the power. We just need to actually take it back a little bit. Okay, no, take it back a lot. But that's the fact of the matter. We're the experts. We are not excluded. We are in all of the circles. We are the superpower of inclusion. And we need to remember that. It's not about feeling excluded or being excluded. Excluded is being what's considered the norm, because you have one way. We have multiple ways. We are multidimensional. We have many ways. We exist in the round, 360. We are always having to be aware of everything and everybody and everywhere. Is that a movie? Everything, Everywhere? Yeah. But we have intersections. That's what I was going to say. We have intersections in the world. And yeah, I'm not going to talk about my father. I was going to. No. Love you, Dad, but no. But really there's this thing. I'm going to put this card because I really it's a little obnoxious for me to say. So I won't say it. I'm like, no, there are people live streaming. I will behave. A little bit, yeah. But when you're at work, I think a lot of people, and this is a room full of women, some men that work in media. So you have to have sort of a public persona at all times. There are things that you can and can't say in public just because of what you do. And that's what I think I really want to impart on you, is that there is that dual personality that you have to have, a Suki and a Sukiness. But at the same time, that Sukiness, the one that is not your imposter, is the one that you should just let roll, let it rip. That's the one that should be in control all the time. The Suki, you get to be that when you're at home, but let the Sukiness out. Let it out all the time. Even when you're at home, let it out, own it, because you are that person. You are so in control. I cannot stress enough how many people I've spoken to in this room, and they so downplay themselves. They so downplay their skills, and they don't remember that, guess what? You own 100% of you. You're in all of those rooms. You are the person that makes that room go around. Because guess what? It's true. And I just want everybody to remember that. Yeah, we can't all be leaders, but guess what? You are the leader. You are the expert of you. I always tell people, I'm not an expert at anything but me. At the end of my life, I can look back and go, the only thing I really was an expert at was being Suki. And that's what you need to remember. You can have all the accolades, all the titles, whatever, but the only thing you can be an expert truly at is being you. And if you're not embracing that, if you're not walking into a room and owning that, then you're doing a disservice. You are absolutely doing a disservice to that Venn diagram where you are the most important thing. Everybody needs to go into a Venn diagram going, yeah, there's 32 men in here and I'm the only woman, but guess what? That's 32 perspectives that are kind of the same, and here's one that is going to be 100% different, and I add the value. You can go into a room, it could be 5 women and 25 men, but those 5 women add so much more value. No offense. Yeah, when I say no offense, I'm offending, so, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, that adds so much value. And I just want everybody in here, men and women, do not devalue what you know, what you do, how you've got there, because that is a wealth of experience that others are not going to have, that other 48, 51% or whatever they are right now. But that's just it. And I completely diverged from everything I was going to talk about. But you know what? Sometimes that works better, because sometimes staying on script doesn't work. And that's me. That is actually my Sukiness. I don't usually say on script. I usually say what I feel. I look around the room. I talk to the people in the room. And I tell you the things that I really do believe will resonate with you. And talking about me all the time, frankly, gets quite boring. And although, yeah, I know there are people here going, oh, no, it's not. But it's the truth, you know? Ultimately, the whole International Women's Day motto, you know, inspiring inclusion, I don't think we need to inspire. I think we need to just go out and be ourselves. Inspiration comes because you see something that's different. Inspiration comes because you see something that gives you joy, that gives you bliss, that makes you want to function. But I don't think we need the slogan, inspiring inclusion. We just need to be inclusive. And I'm all about action. No more talking. I'm done with the talking. As Anna was saying, nah, let's be done with the talking. We're not inspiring inclusion. We're inspiring action because we want to be included. And we want to make sure you remember we're already there. It's not about, oh, we want to be included. No, we're here. We are here. We don't need to be included. We are already included. We just need to make sure that other people remember it. So be yourselves, own those rooms. And I think I'm done.
You're not off the hook just yet. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, I think, seeing as you're... Why don't you take a seat with me for a second? I hope you don't mind. I just think to have this amazing lady up here, we should definitely probe a little bit deeper, right? Ooh. So, firstly, a controversial question. Do we still need International Women's Day? Sharp and take a breath.
That's one of those questions. It depends on the day. You know, sometimes I'm feeling like, yes, we do. No, we don't. For me, personally, I don't think it's necessary. But that's just me, because I have it's not a persona. It's just, I have an attitude where I just said, you know what? I don't care anymore. I think when you've been in a career field, a path where you have been very much always the only woman, you're just like, whatever. Till I was 7 years old, I was the only girl. I didn't have any female cousins. So for 7 years, I had footballs kicked at my head. I had any doll I had, they would tear the head off the doll and shave the head off and use it for like football, baseball, rugby, whatever. So at that time, I was just like, you know what? Just get on with it. I'm okay. I'm gonna give as good as I get. And I was a quiet child.
I mean, that's hard to believe, right, guys?
But it was just one of those things. So I think even as a child and growing up, you know, chemical engineering, I was the first female engineer in a company that was around for 125 years. They didn't have a woman ever go into their lab. And I went in there and they just sort of looked at me. And I was like, whatever, you know, I can make this thing more shiny and more pretty than you ever will understand. And that's just the way it has been, you know. In my Army unit, I was in charge of the unit, and it was, I think there were seven women and 30, 45 guys, and I was in charge of that whole lab and all that stuff, and I just sort of get on with it. But
is International Women's Day a day to talk about all that stuff?
No, every day. Every day. We shouldn't need one day. Every day. You don't just stop being a woman on this, it's like, oh, well, I'm not a woman today because today's not the official day. So, tomorrow I'm going to be like, oh, I'm an international woman. Oh, please talk about me. And then Saturday morning, oh, well, you're done now. It's like, no. I also have that thing about Black History Month, but because, the next day I'm still Black. But, it's just, but I think it's that society always feels that it needs to designate time to stop and go, oh, let's talk about this. Well, you didn't stop and designate time when you decided that childcare wasn't needed, when anything that they strip away from women, they didn't stop and go, oh, well, let's have a day and talk about this. They just did it. So why do we need to have a day to talk about it to get it back? Just give it back. Well, guess what? We're not going to give it back. We're just going to take it.
Well, and actually, I've got some female founders in my network who have quite a strong view on this as well. And they say International Women's Day should be called International Men's Day, because whilst they're out there doing deals and making money, I'm at these bloody events talking about being a woman. So actually, they get this huge advantage.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And the other point I'd make as a journalist is, again, all of these inbound pitches of story ideas around International Women's Day. I cannot tell you how many I have. But I champion female founders and founders from different backgrounds, ethnic minority backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds every day. And I take that as part of my duties every day as a journalist. I don't do it one day a year. Right, mentors, just quickly. So have you had, because I know this is a question that comes up a lot, how do I get a mentor? What should they look like? Do they need to look like me, etc.? Have you had any amazing mentors in your journey? You briefly mentioned your dad earlier.
Oh no, this is going to be so bad.
Make sure the cameras are on.
Because I am such a strong, and I'm owning that, I am a strong advocate for women. However, I have never actually had a female mentor. And that's mainly because I've been in male-dominated industries. And my first mentor, when I was in chemical engineering, was a guy named Jim Bel Castro. And he died a few years ago. But he was absolutely, when I walked in, he said, well, let's go to the lab, let's see what you can do. And he had me electroplate some stuff, and he was like, okay. And then they called me back and they said, yeah, you got the job. And I was like, okay. And I thought I thought I wasn't going to get the job. And he said, well, you did it better than our regular guy. and I was still a student at that time. So it was sort of an apprenticeship, internship at the same time as working there. And he was my first mentor. But I have to mention somebody else. And that is the former deputy director of counterterrorism for the FBI. And
name
he
dropping.
Founded.
Did anyone else see that?
Oh no, I could name drop some other people, but he was by and large the biggest influence on my career path in intelligence, because he interviewed me for the spot in my degree program, and I walked in, sat down, had a chat with him before we had like all the security briefings, and by the end of that first interview, he said, you know what, you're going to be a really good intelligence analyst. Whatever. But I was officially the first Black female graduate of that program. Wow. And I know Bob might be watching, so I'm going to own this one too. And because I'm told I never grab my flowers, this is what my friend Jan always tells me. I was also the first graduate of my intelligence studies program to receive a distinguished alumni award. So that program had been around for 15 years or so, and nobody from that school in the university had ever gotten an alumni award, and I got it.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
So I'm taking that one.
Right, do we have any questions from the floor for Suki? We have a roaming mic. Who would like to ask a question? Who's feeling brave?
Who's feeling brave? Come on, bring it.
She's not that scary, I promise.
No.
Amazing, thank you so much. If you could just say your name and where you're from.
Hello, my name is Erica. I am actually from Colombia, but I live in London. I've been here for 18 years. And it's been hard because I was one of those women that you said that didn't speak English when I arrived here. but actually I speak 3 languages now.
Wow.
So, yeah. But my question is mainly about how hard you had to work to get to where you are, because you just shared all of the things that you did better than any other man. But how about if that wasn't as good or like same as the men? Would you have the same opportunities? What's your perspective? Because I feel that women have to work 10 times harder than men to get what they need. Thank you.
That's one of those questions, because I think sometimes I didn't feel like I was working harder. I just felt like I was doing what I do, and maybe I was working harder, but it didn't feel like I was working harder. There were times, I think probably when I started out my intelligence career, you have to take polygraphs, you have to take lie detector tests, and those were horrible because they make assumptions about you because you are a certain race, a certain gender. So they thought, oh, well, Black female, she must have smoked dope. I've never smoked. I just, when you come from a family where everybody smokes cigarettes and pipes and whatever, you're just like, oh, I don't want to do that. So you feel like, at that time, I felt like I was working harder to prove that I could do something that, no, I had never done that. But I think I worked hard, but I never felt like I was working harder. I think the biggest struggle comes when, as an entrepreneur, when you are going to pitch. I found it actually more at this time in my life when I'm going to pitch and I'm teaching other people how to pitch. I'm going, why am I not having the same opportunities that guy over there who's a numbskull that just wrote something down on a piece of paper and he's getting, 3 million. And I'm going, wait a minute, I just coached somebody over here who has the perfect product. They made it so good that it could go to market now, and you won't give them anything. And that's what I think is entirely frustrating. But at the same time, I'm at a point in my life where I will call it out. When I was younger, I'd call it out, but kind of in a surreptitiously snide way. Now I just call it out to their face. So I'm just like, I don't care. But yeah, I think women do have to work harder a lot of the time. But I don't know. It's one of those one-on-one things. It's like, how confident do you feel in that moment to say something? Are you willing to put yourself out there and say, I don't really like this? You have to weigh up the consequences of whatever action you take. And it's, are you willing to take the negative that may come with it? Or do you just want all of the positives? And I'm very much a pragmatic person, and I'll just go, statistically, this may happen, but you know what? I'm going to try this because, as I always say, I know I saw her. if you that whole, it's really quite common, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. And that was my motto in high school. The worst thing of all is if you don't try at all. That's the biggest failure. So you might as well go for it. You only have one life, right? Well, I mean, some people think you have more, but...
Well, I feel like you've had 9 lives, like a cat. Are there any final questions? See, they're all going to flood in now, aren't they? You've opened the floodgates. Thank you very much indeed. If you could just say your name and which organisation you're from.
Hi there, my name is Colette and I work for Sky. My question is regarding emotions. So you seem to be able to articulate yourself really well. And the stereotype is that women are the emotional ones. And I guess biologically, our emotions do fluctuate. So, but I feel like within an office or within a corporate environment, you need to stay in line and you can't always express how you're feeling. How do you navigate that when you are feeling emotionally, I don't know, up, down, all around? Like, how do you navigate that?
That's my Suki-ness. Because most people wouldn't even know when I'm having a bad day, except when I'm having a bad day, I'm a lot more quiet. I revert to really young Suki, introvert Suki. I just won't speak. When I'm extremely angry, I get very silent. And I have what's called a Madame Medusa stare, where I can just turn somebody to stone. But when it comes down to navigating my emotions and how I really handle that. I think one, it has been the training in the military and also the training as an analyst. And it is really to analyze every situation. It's like, well, this is how I feel, but is it going to be relevant to what the outcome needs to be? And it is really, I can be somewhat cold sometimes in the way that I have to deal with my emotions, because the only thing that I can control in any situation ever, what's going on around me, is me. It's my emotions. So I am the queen of just standing back, breathing deep, and maybe I might just mentally vent. And I have a very expressive face. So when I'm upset, and I'm really upset, people can tell. Madame Medusa's stare comes out, and they know. And yeah, I just got the But
I think
also,
that was to me, not you. She doesn't want the stare.
But can I just finish by saying that I always say that men are actually more emotional than women, and I call men boys with gray hair. That's what I call my partner, boy with gray hair, because and it is essentially, it's kind of true, while as we may actually physically show our emotions, men physically show their emotions, but just in a slightly different way. They show their emotions with their voice, and maybe they might throw something, but when we do it, we show it with all of our emotions, everything, the whole bucket, the crying, the screaming, whatever. We use every single emotion. And men will maybe usually use one or two.
Well, there's a controversial note to pick up in the break. Suki Fuller, well done. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely incredible. Big round of applause for Suki.
Can I go now?
No, we're both going now, I promise. So now it's time for a break. So please go and stretch your legs, grab a cup of coffee or tea, and take a moment to get to know one another, because what an amazing room we have. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. If you could take your seats, please. Thank you. I feel like school mom. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm loving these really high energy levels. This is excellent. I must say, this is an absolute pleasure to host this room. I host lots of events up here and just loving the energy of all these amazing women and the odd amazing man too, I'm sure. For you, I'm looking directly at you. So I hope you enjoyed the break. I hope you did all meet somebody new and just didn't just hang out with your friends from work. We'll be taking a poll later. So let's crack on with the second and last poll of the day. So I'll just give you a moment to grab your phone and head to Slido. So our second poll is thinking about your day-to-day experience among your colleagues at work. How genuinely included do you feel? So the answers are completely included, even if I am a minority in the room, it's a non-issue. Secondly, sometimes I do feel excluded or out of place based on my identity or some other characteristic. Or thirdly, rarely, I can hardly be myself and often have to adapt to fit in. So just give you a few seconds to input your answers. And our next panel will pick up on some of those points. Paints a rather bleak picture, doesn't it? I want to see if we come back to this again next year and hopefully things will look slightly better. So now we're going to hear from Sky, the BBC and News UK about what they're doing to affect the next generation of female technologists. So I'm now going to hand over to Cheryl, co-chair and chapter lead for Tech Women at Sky, and one of the founding partners or founding mothers, I think we called it on the call the other day, of MediaTechWomen, to share some insights from Sky on this topic. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time to attend this afternoon. It is so amazing to see all these faces here. For those of you that attended last year, I may look like a new face. So founding mother, you're like, who's this woman? I was meant to be here last year. I come from Scotland, and unfortunately, our unique weather system cancelled my flight and the flight afterwards. So I was one of those many people watching on the live stream and enjoying it just as much by not being here. But it's actually the energy in the room is fantastic. So thank you so much for making the effort. I do just want to say thank you to News UK for hosting for a second year running. What an amazing space. Yes, Dean, well done. But I also like to thank the BBC who are organising the live stream. And I know that we have a lot of people on that live stream. So hopefully, I've heard so far no technical issues, long may that continue. But there have been a huge number of people that have been pulled together to make this event work. And I just want to thank each and every one of you. Okay, so this year, slightly new, we've decided that we'll showcase ourselves a little bit. So we have 3 15-minute slots, which I'm rapidly using up already, to talk about our organisations and our talent pipeline. So we deliberately made this quite a vague statement so that we could all approach it in our own unique way, being 3 organisations with potentially 3 slightly different cultures. Also means that hopefully for the next 45 minutes, you'll get a little bit of variety as we approach it in our own special way. So for Sky, something I really wanted to do was to show that a route into tech is not necessarily linear. I think everyone here has heard of the squiggly career path, and that's because it's true. I myself don't come from tech originally, and I have lots of people in our organisation who are technologists now who've come from really varied careers. So what I would like to do is spend the next 12, I'm on time, 12 minutes or so talking to one of these amazing talents. And we have so many that it was a challenge to just narrow it down to one, but 15 minutes being that. So I'd like to welcome on stage, and please give a warm round of applause to Sarah Reeder. Sarah, thank you so much for coming along to the event. It's a delight to see you here.
Thank you.
And the green jumper has had so many comments. I feel quite drab by comparison. You look amazing, but not to embarrass you too much. So, first of all, could you just let the audience know what you currently do and just a little bit of what it entails?
Sure. So I'm a service strategy manager in Sky. It's quite a unique role in that, you know, when we think of tech, we've got kind of product owners, we've got people that own processes, tech, all that kind of stuff. And service strategy kind of sits holistically across all of that. So we don't own something specific, but we do support the business with kind of data and insight they need to make effective transformation. And because we don't own something, we can kind of act as that impartial voice of the customer, technology, and the business.
Okay. So strategy is a good word that you've here, because I think there's an expectation that when you are in technology, you are a software engineer, you are a developer, you're a coder, of which there are many in this room, I have no doubt. But it sounds to me that your role isn't quite as technical as that.
No, definitely not. So it's not a typical techie role. But the beauty of it is that I work with very techie people. So for what the knowledge that I don't have from a technical perspective, I'm able to bring it in.
Okay. You didn't come from tech at all originally, right? So let's give the people a bit of a journey as to your life within the organisation.
Sure. So I've been at Sky for 15 years this year, actually.
We couldn't tell, honestly.
And I started in a back office role, dealing with provisioning delays, and kind of progressed through. And I was really comfy in my role up until a few years ago when automation came in and I was almost made redundant. And it was such a big shock for me, just completely pulled the rug from under my feet. But it ended up being the very best thing that happened to me because I was so comfortable that I'd kind of let my development wasn't even on the radar. I was just so comfortable, I could do the job with my eyes closed and it was great. So I pivoted to work in our streaming TV service Now. So I was operations performance manager for 4 contact centres across broadband and TV. And I did that for 3 years, absolutely loved it. But I hit some real highs, I managed to uplift NPS and stuff. And it got to the point where I'd almost done everything I wanted to do. There wasn't really a next high. So I was like, what can I set my sights on now? And technology has always been really interesting to me. I love being part of kind of the project calls. I love being part of seeing how things work. And I thought, do you know what? I would love to work in tech.
Which is dear to my heart because I love working in tech as well. So, but how did you get into tech? So operations role, very historically in a lot of organizations, and Sky is no exception, operations, technology, never the twain shall meet. So how did you transition into that? What support were you given? How did you approach it?
So I think when you think about some of the real traditional techie roles, you probably need, there's a lot more you need. I wouldn't just be able to go to a coding role, right? I just couldn't, I can't code. But for the role that I'm in and the roles like mine, there are a lot of transferable skills within the organisation. Operations is no different. It's not just, numbers and contact centres all day long. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Also, kind of going back to the comment about my development and kind of losing sight of it before, I made a kind of promise to myself that when I got the role in Now, and therefore didn't get redundant, that I was never going to let my development slip again. So I did lots of internal courses. We've got amazing resources. Before it was LinkedIn Learning, now it's Sky Learn. And I reached out to people. Networking has always felt really uncomfortable to me. So I decided to make friends. I thought that was easier. And I just reached out to people and kind of asked what they did and made some contacts within tech. And, that helped me to, someone said, we have a role in our team. I was like, this is great. I'm going for it.
So that's a good point. So you mentioned Sky Learn, which is an excellent resource that we use. Do you find that there's a level of proactivity required? So did you find that actually knowing it was there helped, or did you go out and search for it? How did you approach that?
I think it's a mixture of both, right? Nobody, unless you're incredibly fortunate, nobody's just going to drop an opportunity into your lap. You have to go out and you have to put your name forward. And you have to keep putting yourself out there to get it. This stuff is all there to learn. If you don't know something, right, and unless you know it before, you don't know it. But it's not rocket science. If you don't know it, learn it. Do a course, learn it, speak to somebody. And you know, after the shock of, and it was a shock, right? I really didn't think redundancy was on the cards, and it was. But, you know, not being complacent, actually always thinking what's next. And for me, kind of doing courses and reading up and watching TED Talks and all stuff like that, like it really helped me to kind of focus, not necessarily the job I wanted, because it was kind of broad, but the things I liked, and therefore to try and find a job that matched.
Okay. So, because I have background knowledge of this, so and I didn't say I was going to ask you this, so this will be interesting. So, in terms of now, from where you are now from 12 months ago, obviously I can see your development, I know you, but how do you feel in the last 12 to 18 months, which is when you've been in tech, right? How have you felt that you have grown in that piece?
So this is going to sound a bit cliche, but I actually don't recognize who I was when I started tech. So I started and I felt like such an imposter. I remember we went to the Level Up Summit, not last year, the year before. And I was there and I was like surrounded by all these amazing women. And I thought, in a minute, someone's going to find out I'm not supposed to be here. I really felt like lucky, right? Really, really lucky. And I remember saying to Sharon Wallace, thank you so much for letting me come. And she said, pack it in. You've earned your place here. I don't want to hear any of that again. And I was like, ooh. But it has really kind of got me to realize that actually I am fortunate to be here, right? And I do feel fortunate. But I didn't just fall into this job. I didn't just like open a door and go, oh, here I am. It's through hard work and learning and actually listening to what I want. Because as well, I think important to say, when I decided I was going to move into tech, I did have people that said to me, this might not be the job for you. Like, you might be better doing another job. Like, you're really good with people. Perhaps you should go be an operations manager, which they're not wrong. I'm really good with people, but ultimately it's not what I wanted to do. And I'm so glad that I followed that kind of internal, doing this for me.
Which I think is hugely important. And I think if we took one thing away, I think we would all agree that's what you need to do. And I think it reaches on with Suki's is, you know, you are the expert in you. So therefore, you know, keep hold of that confidence. So kind of moving to the whole pay it forward scenario now, how are you getting involved in the paying it forward, and how do you see Sky and their involvement in bringing that network in? So whether it be new talent into STEM, transitioning into tech, returning into tech, give me some thoughts as to how that's working.
I'm going to answer the second part of that first. So Sky have this amazing scheme called Pathways, or Personal Pathways. And what it does is it looks for the talent all around the business in non-typical tech roles. So things like the contact center, most recently our home service engineers. So all the people that go out and install Sky and broadband and all of that, actually offering them an opportunity to move into tech and other parts of the business where ordinarily it wouldn't be accessible. And to support them with that, there are kind of masterclasses, there are other sessions, workshops and things that they take them along on I think it's a 9-month secondment. In fact, we've just had a new intake. We've got 11 people in our department who have come from home service and are working in tech for the next 9 months, learning about the role. And I think it's wonderful, right? Because we have so much untapped talent around the business that, you know, it might be quite difficult to get into tech otherwise. In terms of me personally, so I'm a huge advocate for that, obviously coming from a non-tech background. And I think, personally speaking for me, but actually I think for everybody, if you see somebody around the business who you think, you know, if they're not in a tech role and you think, oh my God, they have a huge amount of potential, and they are there, right? You'll see them, they've got a great, great work ethic, they want to learn, all that kind of stuff. How can you help them? Think about how you can help them. Think about how you can mentor them. Like, I'm mentoring somebody at the moment who's from home service. He's awesome. Like, he asked what he could do. I gave him some courses, came back on the Monday and was like, I've done them already. Like, a huge amount of potential. And same, there's a lady that works for now. Her name is Annika. She might be watching on the live stream. She wants to move into tech, and we've had some discussions as well about actually how we can help with that.
That's amazing. And it's worth pointing out as well, because I think you're probably too modest to say that, so that you have a huge amount of mentoring skill in the pathway section. And actually in our cohort that have just finished for the year, two very special people out of, I think we had 3 in our organisation, have now transitioned into permanent roles. So, and the amount of value that they have brought from a contact centre background into a technology perspective that gives that 360 customer experience view that I think historically technology has perhaps been lacking, really kind of builds out that whole strategy piece to let you see the bigger picture, and bring into that whole inclusion piece about making sure that we're building for diversity, for inclusion, for accessibility right from the outset, because that feedback loop is starting to come in and we're starting to bring those strengths together. One thing that I think we haven't touched upon, and forgive me because you may not know, so I may take this one on from a Tech Women perspective, is a lot of what Tech Women do as well is go out, and there are a few in the room that are huge advocates and do this, is to go out to schools. So we go out to schools, we bring schools in. Up in Scotland, we have a session that happens with a wonderful company called Smart Stems, where we bring in secondary school people, and we train them. We give them a task, we give them a remit, and we help to get them to understand from a tech perspective the opportunities that are out there. And I think that all 3 of our organisations are going to touch on this, so I'm not going to take too much more time up on this space. But I'm going to do a bit of a shameless plug now, because it's 15 minutes and I don't get a lot of time. If anyone ever wants to talk to me, or in fact, I'm sure Sarah, I'm asking on her behalf, about anything in Sky, please feel free to reach out. I will at this point say thank you very much to Sarah for coming and sharing some of her story. If you could please give a round of applause. 15 minutes always flies. So yet again, I want to thank you for coming. Please feel free to reach out. I will be here for the duration. I can now relax because I've done my bit. So I will probably be like half back in the chair, but feel free to reach out. At this point, I'd like to say thank you, and I will hand it over to our BBC colleague, Lolita Taylor.
Thank you, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you all, to see your lovely faces. Thank you for coming and showing up today, and thank you also to Zing for hosting us at News UK. Now, I'm Lolita Taylor, co-chair of BBC WeSTEM and exec producer of BBC Academy Fusion. I'm very proud of these words on the MediaTechWomen website. I'm going to read them. At the heart of MediaTechWomen is to draw on the power of networking, learning and career development as a crucial means of empowering our community of women and supporting them on their career journey. Why is this important? Only when we are fed can we feed others. That's an important mission if we are to retain talent. 20% of people working in the media tech at the BBC are women. There is much to be done to build that number and to create a pipeline of women in STEM entering the BBC and the industry. So what is BBC WeSTEM, a staff network that represents 800 women working at the BBC in science, tech, engineering and maths doing? As time is short, I will focus on the granular, because I believe little steps times 10 across the country is so important. I'm championing our hubs to outreach to colleges and drip feed an engagement that passes the fizz. At our BBC Birmingham hub, I was proud yesterday only to see my co-leads, Kamara Bennett and Claire Brown, who hosted the BMET College. I joined as a judge, and with them, I watched young people present 4 UX and UI projects for a BBC bite-sized themed project. It was incredible to see the talent and their tutors say the thought of presenting their project to the BBC really raised their game. I have to add, they even found a presenter from an AI suite to do their animation. Should we be scared? Yes, but in a good way. So my final words is we need role models. By being fed, we can feed others and together build a pipeline for new talent entering the industry. And we must celebrate and work hard to retain the talent already in the industry. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our Group Director, Chinny, who is creating massive value for making staff feel included, which is one of our digital first strategies. So welcome, a big hand to Chinny. Welcome, Chinny.
Okay, thank you so much, Lolita, and hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Celebrating International Women's Day, it's also always lovely to be in a room full of people making a positive difference. So I'll start by introducing myself. So Lolita mentioned I'm the Group Director of Diversity and Inclusion at the BBC. I lead our strategies to create a diverse and inclusive workforce for our global workforce of 20,000 people. And I also ensure that the content that we create to educate, entertain, and inform a weekly global audience of 500 million people reflects and represents these audiences in an authentic way. As you know, this year's International Women's Day theme is Inspiring Inclusion, and I'm going to be talking to you about what inspiring inclusion means to me. To set the scene, I'm going to share a personal story about an early experience which made a really big impression on me, but also is a big part of why I do what I do today. So I was born to Nigerian parents in an intertribal marriage. My father is Igbo and my mother is Yoruba, for those of you that are aware of Nigerian culture. At the time, it wasn't common for people to be in an intertribal marriage, and my parents sometimes received unwelcome treatment because of it. I'm the oldest of 3 daughters, and my dad was an incredibly proud girl dad. He was born in a small village in Nigeria. He didn't have very much, but he worked really hard to put himself through university. Eventually, he earned his PhD and started a successful business. Very sadly, he passed away far too soon, and he left my mum, who was a stay-at-home mum at the time, with 3 daughters aged 8, 6, and 1. As was the custom at the time, despite the fact that he'd worked really hard to provide and support his family, because my mum and dad didn't have a son or a male child, we weren't entitled to his estate. So this was extremely traumatizing for my mum, who was a stay-at-home mum at the time, hadn't ever really worked, and she had 3 young children. But she was determined that my sisters and I would never be told that we were less than because of our gender or anything else. So with 3 young children in tow, she went back to university to train as a lawyer and now advocates for the rights of widows in Nigeria. I like to think that the Legally Blonde story is in part inspired by her story, although it wasn't. She gave me the audacity to believe that as a woman and as a Black woman, I can be, I can do, and I can have anything I set my mind to, and also inspire and help other people to feel and believe the same. She inspired inclusion for me and also sparked a passion in me to do the same for others. Since then, I've committed myself fully to creating access and inclusion for marginalized communities around the world. And I've worked in finance, I've worked in fashion, technology, beauty, and now work in media at the BBC. When I think about inspiring inclusion, for me, it's 2-pronged. Firstly, it's about the inclusion of others and how we intentionally create an environment for everyone, absolutely everyone, to be themselves and feel valued and welcome. It's about creating the conditions for people to thrive. I think we can all agree there's a very strong moral imperative. What isn't spoken about as much is the business imperative. There's research from McKinsey that shows that where there's gender diversity on executive teams, you're 25% more likely to have above average profitability. And when you look at inclusion, there's research from Deloitte that shows that organizations with inclusive cultures consistently outperform their non-inclusive equals. They're twice as likely to meet and exceed their financial targets. They're 3 times more likely to be high performing and up to 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. These are huge and significant numbers. For us at the BBC, we've got an equal focus on diversity and also on inclusion. We focus on improving the diversity of our workforce, and we've introduced targets across the entire business to help with this. And I'm really proud that we're one of a few, very, very small handful of organizations of our size that have achieved gender balance. And for us, it's huge and it's something we're really, really proud of. We're also driving inclusion, and we have 3 incredible staff networks who help to foster inclusion and build a community of women across the UK and around the world. They support each other and they champion inclusion. That includes Women in STEM, which is led by the fantastic Lolita and Alice. They've also organised this brilliant event today with Sky and News UK. We have Global Women in News, and we have a broader Women at the BBC network. Lolita's talked to you about some of the work we're doing to improve female representation in STEM. And while we've done good work, we also appreciate there's more work to do, but we're very lucky to have a passionate group of people that are making a positive difference. I think the second prong for inspiring inclusion for me is one that isn't spoken about as much, which is about how I include myself. I believe that as one of very, very few women and few Black women in a senior executive position in this industry, it's important to show up authentically. It's also important to occupy space fully and taking the lessons I've learned in early childhood about believing that I can be, do, and have anything I put my mind to. And I show up with that each and every day. I'd like to encourage, and I believe that doing so will also give people the permission to do the same. I'd like to encourage you that as you think about how you inspire inclusion this year and beyond, and as you do the hard work of including others, you also do the hard work of including yourself. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chinny. That was amazing. Lots to take away from. So I'm now going to hand over from the BBC to News UK. So please come up and share your insights and how you make an inclusive environment for us all. Thank you.
Am I being heard? I am. So I'm Zinga, and I'm very proud as a founder of MediaTechWomen. It's just amazing to be here, and thank you all for coming. It's really a phenomenal moment for me. We are in our second year.
Yes, we are.
And I think there's much more mileage left here, right, Helen?
Absolutely. Just to introduce myself, I'm Helen van der Straten. I am also a founder, though I'm not the chief founder of the MediaTechWomen organization. I'm also co-chair of the Women in Tech here at News. And we are passionate. Sorry, I should bring this closer. Should be mic'd up. We are passionate about increasing the visibility of our women in tech by providing opportunities for networking, learning, and development.
I think at this juncture, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to invite a very special person onto the stage. We would like to invite Sarah Gallo, our Chief People Officer, up to the stage. She is one of the main reasons why we're here. I'd love you to hear from her. Actually, your mic. Oh, your mic.
Hello. Hi. Thank you all so much for being here. I happened to pop out to grab some lunch and saw the queue of amazingly stylish women, mostly, waiting to come in, and I was desperate to get up here to see you all. So thank you for coming. I'm really just here to do an intro, but I was feeling a bit of FOMO because I wasn't included. So that's why you've got me. Sorry. So I wanted to firstly congratulate our fabulous Women in Tech network, one of our 13 fabulous networks, for organising this along with their peers at the BBC and Sky. So well done for getting this off the ground and making it such an inspiring event. I have notes. So we're really, really proud of the work we're doing in the space of DE&I, and particularly around helping increase our representation of underrepresented groups within our workforce, and hopefully therefore telling stories that resonate with much more diverse audience outside of our business through the work we do across our brands. You guys are going to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff we do. But whilst I'm here, for anybody who is News UK, I wanted to shout out to some of our other fabulous networks. So in particular, our News Is Out network do some great work, and our Parents and Carers network. So anybody who wants to find out more, both internally or externally, please look at our website. Internally, our intranet site, DE&I site, will show you how to find out more. And well done, ladies. You're smashing it and doing it, looking beautiful. And over to you.
Thank you.
She says
Thank you.
Back on.
We back on? Yes,
Oh, yeah, I
we
think
are.
so. She says looking beautiful. Did you see her?
You're looking fabulous. Right.
So, Helen.
Yes, I hope everybody can see us. I think I'm just going to move forward a bit.
So Helen and I are the co-chairs of Women in Tech, as you have heard already. And but not just that, right? There is a special connection we have.
Yeah.
I knew when I started working with you, there was something
Something
there.
that makes us work. Something that's there. Well, I should say that actually we share triplets, and not in the sense of partnership, you know, because my husband, I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but not in that sense, but in the sense that I have twins who were born on the 8th of October, 2010, and
I have a daughter born on the very same day. Now, what are the odds?
So because of that synergy, I think we have a lot in common. We work really well together, and we are so passionate about making women in tech a really effective environment.
That's right. So not only do we work harmoniously together, you keep me grounded, and I am that blue sky thinking creative type. So we have this wonderful synergy, as you pointed out. It's great to also co-chair the Women in Tech Network with Helen. It's a very effective, very well-run network, and quite incredibly engaged.
Yeah, and I'd say that I credit that to our inspiring leadership. I mean, that stems from our CEO, Rebecca Brooks, who's just amazing.
Also, Sarah Gallo, whom you just met.
Fabulous Sarah.
Fabulous leader.
And our immediate boss, Kirstine King.
Wherever she is.
She's here somewhere.
There she's at the back.
SVP of Business Operations and Programs. So yeah, fabulous leadership. And we are enabled and empowered to actually go out and impact and inspire the next generation of technologists. And that's really key for us.
So we're going to take this opportunity today to actually talk about some of the great things that we do here as Women in Tech, the numerous really impressive initiatives. In fact, not just boast about it. I think it's the right time to really shout from the rooftops that we do phenomenal things in that space. You know, within my remit, I work within culture. And obviously, I'm passionate about culture, and I believe that culture doesn't happen in a vacuum. There has to be an intention to create good culture. So, you know, we have to be making valuable contributions to make our work environment really, really positive. And that brings me to a really important point around purpose. It's an invaluable perk. It's a very, very valuable perk that we have. You know, it doesn't always come when you sign the contract, but we have purpose here. We are able to really drive some really great initiatives. You know, and purpose also heightens that sense of, you know, morale in the team. You know, we are able to really give back in terms of our skills, our talents to our communities. And you know, with that team morale, where we invest all of those skills, we really make News UK a great place to work. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, Zing. I'd say that our churn remains at an all-time low. People love working here, you know, and our retention is great. It's a great place, right? We've had so many people come back to News who have left. And in fact, I saw somebody on Tuesday who said, oh, is there anything going? I might be back. So it is somewhere that people do want to come and grow their careers. And I think that it's just looking at everything we're doing. Our percentages are fantastic. I mean, of our, against the industry average of 28% women in tech, we are at 37. So we're doing something right? Exactly. And I think it's just the fact that we can increase our diversity, inclusivity, but we're giving people the opportunity to do different things. So not just do their 9 to 5, but actually broaden, do those stretch projects like our work experience, like our STEM, that enables you to grow and develop as a person. And also giving something back to the community, which is so important. And as a woman of color, I feel passionately about this.
I think there's a lovely showreel happening in the room. Like, I hope you're taking it in, because what it does, it just gives you a lovely sort of snapshot of a window into the great things that we do. Some heartwarming moments there. And that is because we are doing lots of things here with it through the Women in Tech Network chiefly. But also, one of the key things is about building that talent pipeline. We do it strategically. We target the year 9s just before they choose their GCSEs, and we right up to university just before they join the job market. And there are so many ways that we do that. One of the ways is through work experience. So that's your baby, Helen.
That is my baby.
Yeah.
Adding to the 3 I already have. Yes, it's another baby because I love babies. There we are. So yeah, work experience is something that we have introduced here at News UK as of last summer. When we do the STEM, we realize that we're doing quite a lot in that space, but almost it's another deep dive level that people can get involved in, and children can and young people can learn from that. So it's looking at those slightly older ages, so there's sort of 18, 17, 16, 17, 18 ages, and we get them in here. You should see a schedule come up at some point on the reel, and we deep dive into engineering, AI, innovation, data, and it's all down to our volunteers here who actually put their time in to help. I plan it all, get it all there. The young people come in and they spend a week with us going through everything we do here in tech and understanding things like Scrum Master. What is a Scrum Master? You know, what on earth is that? But then understanding all those things, using Jira, using, you know, tickets, all those, there's the schedules come up. But yeah, so we give them all a real variety of what we do here in tech. Sorry.
Fine. And I was gonna do a plug for the stat. We got some stats. We came prepared.
Stats.
They speak for themselves, don't they, Helen?
The stats speak for themselves, and you know I love numbers. So in total, we've had almost about 600 young people come through our doors through our outreach program. Yes, give it a woof. I love that. Yes, exactly. And most of them have been female, so that's what's even more important, and that for me resonates, okay? I wish somebody at that age had sat down with me and talked about my career options. And so we try and do this. And so we've had, and I'm looking at my numbers now, because we've had about 500 of those have been through different outreach programs, some at Harris Academy in Bermondsey and other places. We've had the Rise Academy, we've had work experience, we've had all sorts of different things. And also we've had 2 interns who were paid here. So they came here and did some work, and we managed to pay them, which was wonderful.
So as Helen has said, we use that vehicle of the STEM outreach programs to really make that impact in the community. We've forged a really amazing relationship with Harris Academy Bermondsey, and we have done so much work with them. But you know what? I don't have to talk about it because they're here to tell us all about it.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, welcome to the stage. We have Dr. Rihanna Elsden, and we have, I'm going to have to remember the names of the students, Ayanara, Samantha, and Cheryl. Welcome to the stage. Just hang around.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. So one of the many highlights of the News UK workshop was being afforded the opportunity to meet and hear from working professionals who kindly and invaluably shared their personal journey in tech. With this experience, I was not only informed of the various careers available in technology, I was also inspired and motivated to pursue my dream career and follow what I'm truly passionate about as a profession. The captivating stories I heard during the day here at News in January showcased women who are resilient, hardworking, and ambitious. This naturally inspired many students, including myself, to consider a career in tech. Ultimately, the vital connection News UK has made with Harris Academy Bermondsey and with other schools it currently partners with will not only positively influence upcoming generations of women, but create the women of today in tech.
Hello. My day at News UK was an eye-opener, but only in the most positive of ways. I will be honest, I walked into this building with a pre-established mindset that technology was, no offense, but a bit boring, too difficult, and just not what I wanted to do. However, spending the day with such amazingly talented professionals who navigated us through the different branches of tech careers in a variety of workshops made me realize that there is so much more to technology than just coding and computers. From business analyst roles to finding out the intricacies of what project management involved, I was struck by the creativity and innovativeness in each job spec. I was also surprised to learn about teamwork and variety of tasks that the jobs allow individuals to engage with each day. A session I really enjoyed was where we had to create a news app targeted to a younger audience like myself, coming up with more exciting and maybe even revolutionary ways of delivering the news to an undertapped audience. It encouraged me to think outside of the box and gave me an insight into what some of the facilitators' day-to-day work looks like. I also, like Cheryl, really enjoyed hearing from the facilitators and finding out what the journeys taken by women here at News UK into the positions they are now. It was truly inspiring, and it gave me a renewed determination to excel as I step into the world of work. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name's Samantha. Personally, our trip's highlights was certainly the variety of workshops which made for an exciting, informative and packed day of activities. One I really enjoyed was the business analyst workshop, which challenged us to think critically using a case study scenario that we could relate to. This was to organize our own prom, where we had to think about all the different elements we'd want in the end event and work backwards through all the things we therefore needed to organize and distribute as tasks for others to work on. This workshop really showcased effective problem solving and the importance of communication and teamwork. Unexpectedly in this task, and indeed throughout the day, we really got to explore and use our creativity, which really debunked tech industry myths. The workshops revealed to me that tech is more, like Ainara said, than sitting in isolation, undertaking a repetitive task. It's about strategic approaches to societal synergy. News UK's innovative approach in designing the day the way they did when we visited completely transformed many prior perceptions, with the emphasis that technology embraces individual skills and creativity and then creates links between roles to achieve a shared outcome, which reinforced my interest in the field. Thank you.
I've been a teacher for 22 years in 4 different schools, and I can honestly and proudly say that teaching at my current school, Harris Academy, Bermondsey, is of the highest quality that I've experienced in my career. But we do more than teach. We also maximize opportunities for learning outside of the classroom through trips, career guidance, and partnerships, like the ones we have now established with News UK, that open our students' minds to the possibilities and opportunities available to them beyond their time with us. The partnership with News UK helps with one of our core aims of enabling all our girls to leave feeling they're able to flourish and conquer the city. Because for some of our students, especially those younger than those here with me today, though we are only a 15-minute walk up here from Millwall, just from Millwall football ground, they were just physically that close with a tower block that looks upon the skyline that you are part of. For some of our students, through no fault of their own, they feel as disconnected from London and its opportunities as if it were a distance from here to the moon. The partnership with News UK connects our girls to the city, and more widely, it empowers them to investigate roles and futures within the tech industry. As you've heard from Cheryl, Ainara, and Samantha today, through the great variety of workshops and speakers, the partnership has helped overcome skepticism and challenge perceptions and stereotypes about what a career in tech might be like. It's made students curious to know more, and when you have a student's curiosity, that's a powerful connection. The workshops and days with News UK have included presentations by staff who, in some cases, talked of having to overcome barriers and show great resilience, both personally and professionally. This again connects brilliantly with our students and resonates perfectly with the messages we try to teach. It has given them great role models, as they've said. I'm particularly grateful for the messages delivered through the partnership about making sure that students pick what they love to do for their career and not just picking what they think they should do for a career. One day, these may be your colleagues. They may be your doctor. They may be making or engineering the music you listen to. The partnership with News UK makes possibilities seem genuinely possible. I want to thank you for inviting us today and for all of your outreach work with schools. Thank you.
as you can see, we are truly creating that STEM talent pipeline through the work we do here in our Women in Tech network. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Very powerful and inspiring stuff. I hope you're all feeling as inspired as I am. And as the mum of 2 girls, that really resonates what these young women were talking to us about. So thank you very much indeed. Now, can I invite the members of our final panel to come up to the stage? Are you, Shelley? Yeah. Suki, you're up. You're going to be asking the questions this time, Suki. So you're in control, you'll be pleased to hear. So whilst they can't make their way back up to the stage, I'd like to return to the results of the poll from earlier, because I think it will set things up perfectly. Yeah, Suki, if you could just sit on the end here. We were just hearing there about some of the great kind of grassroots work that's going on, which is feeding directly into the talent pool at a kind of entry level. So research from the Tech Talent Charter shows that while gender trends are heading in the right direction at that level, the outlook remains much bleaker in the more senior ranks. So in this report, we learned that a staggering 1 in 3 women are currently planning to quit their tech jobs. So if you think about that, that's roughly a third of this room. That's absolutely terrifying. So how do we make sure that that doesn't happen? You guys are going to fix that, right, on the next panel. So a perfect moment to hand over to these major heavyweights in intellect only. In the DE and I arena to answer some thought-provoking questions about the definition of inclusion, what it means in practice, and how true inclusion can be modelled and practiced in our organisations. So I've been promised this one's going to be a bit spicy, and with you at the helm, Suki, I don't doubt it for a second. Over to you.
Okay. Kind of sounds like my mic's not on, but it is on.
It is.
Just yeah, no, I know Manuel. He's like excellent. A guy in the room, and he's excellent. Everybody give it up for Manuel that back there. Always have to give it up for. Anytime you're at a tech conference, you always have to give it up for the tech because, you know, it's like a room full of people always critiquing everything you do. So, you know, but yeah, that title, what's inclusion got to do with me? Where do we start? We had a really spicy conversation, and we were just like, okay, we need to pull it back a little.
We might have filled it with that conversation.
I think that was our best work.
Yeah. It usually happens, you know, and then we get here and we're like, okay, we're not going to be quite so spicy, but you know what? Spice it up, ladies. So
I need my manager to last one.
I'm going to say the first thing, we should introduce everybody, but I'm like, the names are up there, the titles are up there. You know, do you guys want to jump in? Or I said, guys, I hate that.
We can own guys.
Yeah, I know, but
yeah,
you know,
we can take control of guys.
All right. Yeah. I did tell you could slap me if I say it, so it's still open option. Where do you want to start? Do you want to go to the questions? Do you want to do the intro, like who you are, what you do? I guess we could do that. Should we go in the order of the slide? We'll go in the order of the seats. So Shelley.
Hello. I'm quite scared.
I'm not
really. I'm excited.
No way. Not this way. No way.
I am head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at News UK. So yes, I look after the diversity across all of our areas of our business. And as you know, you're in the building here. We've got lots of different products. We've got the Times. We've got the Sun. We've got our radio stations, you know, a whole suite of different products. And I look after how we can attract, retain, recruit, of the culture. And I really want to talk about the culture today because it's really, really fundamental to what I think DE&I is. I'm kind of bored of the DE&I acronym. I'd like to move it away. So like, how do we ensure that we have a culture of inclusivity, which is what this is all about, and also how do we support our products to be the best that they can be? They're phenomenal already, but how do we just continue that and support them through that? And I have a phenomenal team, some of who are here today.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. It is just such an amazing energy to be in this room with all you amazing people. So just wanted to say that to start off with. So hello, I'm Jessica Shibley, and I am Head of Creative Diversity at the BBC. So my remit and my team's remit is to ensure that we have authenticity, inclusion and representation, both in our on-screen and on-air content, but also off-screen and off-air. And my remit covers television, all our television output, radio, children's education, and sport. So basically everything that the BBC makes except for news. I don't know why I look at Shelley when I say that, but yeah, not news. And it's been really interesting actually, and I guess being at the BBC, there is a sense of responsibility, rightly so. We're funded by the license fee, by everyone here, I hope. And so there is an acute sense of responsibility that we serve all audiences, that everyone can see themselves reflected in all the content we make, and that everyone feels included in that. I'm so passionate about this, I could go on, but I will pass to Sharon and hopefully go on a bit later.
Thanks, Jessica. So I'm Sharon Wallace, I work for Sky. I have the absolute privilege and honour of working in our tech team, and my job within that is delivering on our people strategy, holding the umbrella over multiple pieces of work that help make Sky and make technology in Sky the best it can be. I want it to be an inclusive culture, a welcoming culture. I agree completely, we were talking about this on the call. We both agree that culture is fundamental to inclusion. And making sure that I bring, and that we all bring, the D&I lens. I'm a great believer that it is not on the shoulders of the person with DE&I or people in their job titles to bring this work. It has to be across everybody. We all have a responsibility, which is why I actually quite like the title of this. Because what's inclusion got to do with me? Everything.
Yes.
Everything. And everyone. Exactly. And on that note, we're going to dive in, and I'm going to go with the question that they're scared. I don't know why they're so scared. No, Sharon's not scared. Sharon's not scared.
Sharon's scared. I'm going to throw the questions away, and I was like, really?
Shelley and I were speaking, like, she's not going to stick to the script. Like, she's going to stick to those questions. She's
That's good.
But,
also, we're trying to bring vibes at the end of the day because we know there's been a bit of fatigue, so we have to bring some kind of energy to this. Leave people feeling pumped, you know?
I'm going to do some of the questions. Come, let's go. All right, yeah. See you like this, Sharon. Okay. Sharon's up. I like this. We're hearing about DEI. Do we say DE&I or do we say DEI?
Or EDI?
I know.
Nobody says DIE.
Does everybody know what it means, though? I was like, does everybody know?
Why do we have this acronym? Why? Why can't we just say, are you included? Exactly. I think in all of this, the one word that's most important is inclusion. Yeah. We have spent far too much time focusing on the D element. The D is the people coming in the door. It's the difference that we all have. Every one of us has differences. You know, we will all be different for various reasons or various backgrounds. I clearly speak differently to everybody else on the stage as well. Red leprechaun. But it's that is the difference. We've spent too much time focusing on the diversity and not enough focusing on the inclusion, because the diversity is identifying populations, and in doing that, are we othering in doing that and identifying these populations? Well, here's a program for this is another program. There's another program for the women, and there's a program for the gay people, and there's a program for the black people. And can we just have an inclusive environment where everybody comes along, is themselves, brings their best self? Let's face it, some of us don't always have best bets. Like, I can be a cranky so-and-so. I try to leave that at home when I can, when I need to. Like, as you said with your husband, you keep that stuff for him. Yeah. Not my husband. He doesn't have that. Okay. No, partner. Sorry. My mistake. But in building that inclusive environment that everybody gets to contribute to it. And that's why, for me, inclusion is the fundamental core to all of it. And we need to focus in on the inclusion and building that out so that everybody's included in that. We build products that are inclusive. We deliver services that are inclusive. We build environments and cultures that are inclusive. To me, that's the obvious answer. Not easy to do, I hasten to add. Okay, go on, Jessica.
Can I add to that? I just feel that organizations sometimes, and you know, I can see why we obviously, it's right that we have set metrics, because if you can't change what you're not measuring. But in order to reap the benefits of diversity, you have to have inclusion. Yeah. Otherwise, you've brought a lot of that whole wealth of diversity, of those different perspectives, those different stories, and the different life experiences together. But then if you don't have an inclusive culture, then everyone is self-censoring and having to feel like they have to fit in. And how many times will that cliche of women having to act like men to be able to be in a boardroom and to I guess, people end up assimilating. And I was sharing in a meeting earlier, it's like the very fact that my parents, I'm the eldest in my family, and they named me Jessica. They just moved from India to England, and I'm the eldest. And they just thought, actually, and I remember my dad joking, it's like, oh, you'll definitely get invited to a job interview. And you know, then it's up to you. But this idea is so deep rooted that, you know, you have to fit in, and you come from another country, you fit in, you adjust how you know, sort of look, your hair, your clothes, your name. My dad's called Bharat, he called himself Barry for a really, really long time. And then, you know, sort of in the 90s, we got him to change it back. But I think there is this thing of if you don't have inclusion, you will never ever get the benefits. All those statistics about how much you know diversity brings to creativity, to productivity, to profit. You won't get that without inclusion.
So how do we get there?
Culture.
Yeah.
It's about the culture of the company, and that's why I even think, I mean, Sarah's here now. I'm not saying I want to change my title, but it'd be like, what's your role as, you know, head of DE&I? It's kind of head of culture. How do I make everybody, it's not like it's my whole responsibility, how do I make everybody feel included, get everyone a hug as they come into the office, but how do I make everybody feel included? How do you create an environment like that? So one of the things that I'm so proud of, and I think as a company we're really proud of, is our networks. So we've got 13 networks, and that's increased from 4 over the last 4 years. And one of the reasons I'm even in my role now is because I created the first network for Black and Asian employees here at News UK. And it was literally a game changer for me. You know, I'd spent so many years not feeling like I could be me, not feeling like I could say my piece, not feeling like I could, not feeling seen, not feeling, you know. And then all of a sudden, I remember this network and this room, and I just felt this elevation. If you think about it, we come into work every single day. You know, we work our whole lives, and so much of our time, we know that we walk in and we don't feel comfortable, or we don't feel like we're included, or we don't feel like we can really be ourselves. Can I really just pop in here the way I want to? Can I come and talk in a bit of a Brummie accent? But the more you can do that, the more that you can create an environment where people can come in and actually they do feel welcomed. And literally, I was just having a conversation with someone, and they were saying, actually, in their last job, they said 90% of their time, sorry, Yvonne, 90% of their time, they didn't feel, they had imposter syndrome. And they said they've not once felt imposter syndrome here. And I think that is testament. And, you know, one of the things we measure is within our engagement surveys, I can be myself at work. And it is over 80%. And that, you know, that for me is important. If you think about how you drive change, the more people feel empowered, the more they can walk into this place and be themselves, the more that they'll push themselves in work. The more that they will push themselves in work, the more that they will apply for that job, the more that they'll dedicate to the company. So I think it kind of works hand in hand in supporting the company in all of its goals, in kind of driving that culture.
You know, whenever I think of the term culture, whenever I think of the term inclusive or inclusion, I always think of comfort. I always feel like it's a level of comfort
I agree.
with who you are and where you are and how you allow yourself to be in that place. It's like, do you feel comfortable to be you? And that makes you feel included. That's how I feel.
100%.
Go ahead, Sharon. Just this look like I'm just thinking, concentrating. It takes time. I'm 53 now. It's funny you mentioned the word comfort, and when I was thinking about changing cultures, to your point earlier, discomfort. We have to live with the discomfort. Yes, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah, and I always think the uncomfortable nature of when people feel that in a culture, in a society, it's because it's what they perceive as a diminishment of their power. Oh no. Yeah, I get where you're coming. I get where you're coming from. But if you think about it, if we're prepared to be uncomfortable with something and have the discomfort, surely that discomfort comes from building a new skill and flexing a new muscle. And that's if you're willing to. If you're willing, it's the people that are not willing, and those are the ones that we need to help change. Yeah, it's not changing us. We have to help them change. Exactly, because we can't come along and talk in an echo chamber about in a room full of women and talking about we need to bring about all this change. Yeah, no. So we're fine. So we have all the skills, we have everything. We've been developing the shit out of, haven't we? Seriously, you know, come on, like half the stuff in the world was built by us, or was engineered by us, or we gave the idea to somebody. No, we didn't give it; they just stole it. So we're fine. We have to actually help the change. We need to help them change. Sorry, go on. No, go.
I guess just kind of along that thread, I guess in media in particular, I feel that the need for inclusion and representation is amplified. I think obviously diversity and inclusion, equity, it's important in all industries, but I do feel there's a very heightened amplification when it comes to media. Yeah. And then I think that I talked about sort of being really passionate about my job. It's a huge privilege as well, because there's then the ability to influence and impact what people are seeing on their screens, on their devices, hearing, on the podcast. And I think thinking about how inclusion kind of works into that, and it's not looking at one thing at a time, it's looking at that intersectional identity. So, it's not just saying, today we're talking about women. It's like, yes, we can talk about neurodivergent women, we can talk about Asian women, Black women, class, all sorts of demographics, regional accents, all of that. So I think all of that has to come in to play when we're talking about inclusion. And certainly, sort of by having that representation in our content and our output, that's when audiences feel included. Because I think that we kind of underestimate the power of, I guess, when you have media, and I worked in children's for a long time, and I guess it's coming from that, especially for young audiences, what you watch and hear actually affects how you see yourself. It affects how you see the world as well. And if you don't feel that sense of pride around your identity, whether it's your gender, whether it's your ethnicity, whether it's neurodiversity, then you might then hide it. You might feel a bit ashamed about it. You might lack confidence about it. And all the things we talk about when it comes to inclusion, it's kind of anti that basically. And then on a more positive note, we do get on a positive note, I guess we do get a lot of audiences writing into us, and sometimes it's constructive feedback, and sometimes it's actually been blown away by actually us having that representation inclusion in our content. So gladiators recently, having the first deaf gladiator who's a woman, Fury, that's been really powerful. We've had parents, we've had sort of lots of people writing in going, never thought that this is something I could see. We've also on Gladiators had our first South Asian gladiator, and we did a children's drama last year called A Kind of Spark, which was 3 neurodivergent actors, autistic actors, 3 female powerful amazing leads representing that to autistic girls, and having that feedback and people going, oh my god, I feel seen. And we have that power through media, which I think is so unique, and we need to do more with it.
It's to rev it up.
Yeah.
But how do you make, as I said, comfort? So while you have the positive feedback, how do you make the other people that don't feel like it's necessary, that think that anything about inclusion or culture or belonging, anything, they just think, oh, it's not necessary, doesn't need to happen. How do you deal with that?
This might be controversial, but I think it's also to do about showing the positive benefits of doing something like this. I think, we say we don't want to do International Women's Day because we don't think we need it, but actually look how phenomenal this event is today. The hype that this event will create, the noise it will create, it will get back to our businesses, it will get back to our CEOs. There might even be a party in a few weeks' time, like, oh my God, I saw something about that media tech event. That is amazing. And they're like, really? So that works, that's good. And I know that publicity sometimes can feel like a real bad, negative almost thing, but actually I think if it works to make the business look good, those people who are like, should we be doing these things? Should we be spending money on these things? Oh, it's making me look good. Oh, it's getting me good publicity. That might lead to more business. That's how I think, and that might sound a bit crude. I think, we work in a capitalist corporate system and we have to play within that and we have to just work within that. So I think these events still do need to happen. The hype behind them does, and we need to show the benefits and keep talking about them.
Yeah.
And just building on that, I think inclusion has to come from the top. It has to be mandated, that authenticity through commitment from leadership. That's when you you're setting the tone, you're setting kind of the values of the organization. And I think that it's a feeling, and I actually love what you said about comfort, but it's how people feel when they come to work. And if you feel sort of at your best, you feel relaxed, you're not having to go, oh, okay, I have to kind of deal with all these other extra thoughts which are then preventing me from doing my job because I've got all these other things to think about. And then actually you're getting the best out of people, and especially in the creative industry, you could say that inclusion is an imperative for creativity. I feel that but it has to be driven from the top.
So what about the people that may be watching on the live stream? For everybody here, I think most of them are women from the 3 organizations. So if they're in one of the other organizations, or if they're not even in this field, how do you get that top leadership buy-in? How do you get them on board? I mean, we all have the numbers, we know the stats, we know that it is good for you financially, for your corporation, but how do you get that buy-in? How do you keep that buy-in? How do you make sure that it becomes part of your culture? Because there's 3 ladies here who this is already embedded in your organizations. But what about those that are just starting out? What about those that don't have it? How do you help them? I would say in this, Sky doesn't have it right. And I think any organization who's out there who's saying, we've got it, we've nailed it, we've moved on. I think we need to have an honesty moment here. So many organizations, Sky, we're working on this. We are doing the best we can and moving things forward and moving the dial. There's a phrase that your culture is only as good as the worst behavior it'll tolerate. So I think allyship is fundamental to the success of inclusion. And I think when we think about tech women and women communities of that, we can't just rely on, right, okay, men, sort this out, please. I think, again, inclusion is about everybody working together to improve this. It's about thinking about what in-groups and out-groups are you part of? How do you create psychological safety for others? Take that as a starting point. What have I done to create psychological safety for others? What have I done to build trust-based relationships? I was at an event there recently, and it was a phrase somebody used, and it just blew my head open. I said, in a room full of opportunity, whose name will you say? Yeah. So how do we build the culture? By demonstrating the behaviors that we want to see everywhere. How do we get bold in talking to senior leaders and saying, can I tell you about this event I was at? This is what they talked about. in a room full of opportunities, whose name have you said? Have you said a name lately? Whose name was it? How do you know about these amazing women over here that are doing some fantastic work? And
we need to get more men to say the name.
Yeah.
Not just women saying other women's names. We need men to be
Mhm.
saying those names and making sure that they're making others aware.
Mhm.
And we do, I think there's this discussion about sort of the unknown male allies, because I think there are a lot more men that are allies. They're just not very verbal about it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're afraid sometimes to put their head above the
It's a
parapet.
psychological safety again.
Yeah. And I think especially, as we move forward in generations, we'll see more men that are a lot more empathetic towards women. We have a population of men that were raised by single mothers, that were raised in families where the mother worked. So they understand the nuances of society. They understand that women need to have the same rights in work that men do. They know that we need to have higher salaries. They know about the school run because they were that child in the 1980s that had a key and they had to go home because their mom was at work. And they're now in the working environment and they understand this. And they have been allies their whole careers. They just haven't been verbally public. How do we get those men to be more active? Because I do believe there are a lot more men than the statistics say that are allies. And we just need, and maybe we don't need to have them be public, but we need to have them make sure that they're aware that we know they're there.
Can I be a bit controversial as well?
Yeah.
As we said we would be.
Come on.
I firmly believe we need to get men in the room, and we will, and we'll build on it if we look around here. But the women's movement is phenomenal. Like, look what we can all do when we come together. I think, and it's something we spoke about, there needs to be more allyship within our own intersections and within our own groups. Like, I think, we sit here and we pat ourselves on the back and we're like, we're doing really, really great, and look at everyone in this room, but we need to start thinking who's missing from this room and who we're not pulling through. So we might feel comfortable, we might think we've got to, News UK, we've got to 43% female. That's up from 36% in 2019. I was reading some stats that said that there's 47% of people on boards now are women, which is phenomenal. That's great. I would like you to imagine how many of those are Black, Asian, or ethnic minority. Like, someone just even try and guess. 3%.
I already know.
Like, so that's what I mean. Yeah, you're like, girl, I already know. But the thing is, that's what I mean. And it's like, actually, I just want us to think more about all of us need to think about it. And we've got so many networks as well. And it's something that we want to work on, is like, how do we just look at our networks? How do we look at our groups? How do we look at our team to say who is still missing from this, and use the power that we have to pull through? Because I still think there is work to be done within our own spaces,
Yeah, there's definitely that. When we are in a room, always look around to see what the room looks like.
Yeah.
Because I co-lead a women in tech group. Luckily for me, I have a female co-lead who is a white female. Our rooms are always fairly balanced. We always have a really great mix. But you can sometimes go to women in tech events and be one of two women of color in the room.
Yeah.
And then I usually have to go up and say, hey, you might want to reach out to other people within your networks.
Yeah.
But this room,
I know, it's beautiful.
Nicely mixed.
Yeah.
Nicely mixed room. Definitely. I'm liking this room.
Yeah.
there is something, isn't it? How there's been this kind of trend of almost how you look at sort of representation, and then initially it was just like, okay, gender, and some of you may be familiar with the 50-50 project at BBC, which started off in news actually and has expanded.
We adopted that. We've got that.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Always take the good stuff. Always take the good stuff.
Exactly.
That's the
But
definitely.
there's no competition.
And such a simple way to go, okay, let's just count, how much, sort of gender representation we have. But then it's been expanded, rightly so. It's not, it's still called the 50-50 project, but we also now do, ethnicity representation, disability as well, and that's monitored as part of it. Same mechanism for I guess, you know, counting the representation. But I think it's happened with ethnicity as well. Sort of, I think it started with kind of Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, and then actually now it's like conversations are, but actually it's not one homogeneous group.
Yeah.
Let's be specific and let's talk about, you know, the specificity around, you know, being Black, being Asian, being, you know, and what is minority ethnic? Why don't we just actually say what the ethnicities are? Southeast Asians, massively underrepresented, and so I think what we are looking to do now is to be more specific. But it's been a journey.
I think there's a key point there around data and understanding your data, and like, come on, we're in tech. This should be easy stuff. And understanding where our populations, like not necessarily where our populations are, but looking at the data that tells us around the invisible diversity as well. Those who are neurodiverse, those who have disabilities. You have geographical disability, geographical diversity as well, and making sure that, you know, we've our head office in London, and those of us who are based elsewhere in Sky are always going like, yeah, but everything happens in London. Can we not just have stuff in Scotland where I live, please?
It's the geographic, it's the
socio-economic pieces as well. But the data will help us, and it's looking at the data through multiple lenses and thinking, right, okay, you might have fantastic data for your percentages of women, but if they're all in your lowest bands in lowest organizational structures, is that really helping you? You may, you know, so looking at it through the lens of banding, looking at it and promotions, looking at it at retention, looking at the attrition piece. So, you know, doing a piece of work and say, actually, who is the biggest population leaving? And not just saying, well, you know, women and men are equal. Well, can we break that down, please, and say, like, okay, can we compare people with disability and then look at it across gender? And can we look at people who are identified as neurodivergent and then look at it through the lens of gender or ethnicity? And thinking about our data, we've all this, the AI should allow us to do this.
That comes into, I know we only have like 5 seconds left, so I'm going to end on the controversial note. But then that comes into the aspects of data security, data privacy, GDPR. It depends on how much people wish to divulge. I mean, you can divulge a certain amount when you're working for an organization, but it comes down to how much do people want to actually share.
People do, but I'm like, the data, but do something with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just like you keep talking. It's like someone mentioned earlier, why are we going to do more research?
Yeah.
We don't need to research anything.
We have the numbers.
We've always, talk to me, you know, it's that. I think we've got to make sure the data is useful.
Yeah.
Well, we have 0 on the clock, but I don't see anybody doing anything out there. So, no, she did. No, she's jumping now. Okay.
Everyone wants a wine.
So, can I just like 2 minutes? Okay, cool. I just want to first of all have everybody say one thing that they would like to say. You can say anything you want. Just, you know, any sentence that you want. You can say, what's inclusion got to do with me? The thing that you'd like to see happen.
Okay.
The action that you think needs to be taken. It can't be anything about talking, no. It has to be about action.
Okay. I'd say, don't be scared of publicity. Look down who's not included, and try to link everything to your commercial and business outcomes, because you'll get better response from it.
I will say, what's inclusion got to do with me? Everything. And I think it's up to everyone to think about it. I think we get really, really busy. I think time works against us. I think everybody is so busy, and then that's when you see the inclusion drop away. And I think keeping it at the top of the agenda and putting it back at the top of the agenda again and again and again, and driving a culture, as we've spoken about, where actually, are we being inclusive? How do people feel? Because actually, inclusion is a feeling.
I would say be intentional. be intentional in bringing about change, being intentional in the actions. Don't just, these are lofty and conceptual topics sometimes, but the reality is, how do we make these real? So it can be as simple as looking at the agenda for your next team meeting, town hall, all hands, whatever. Is there a people element and is it the last section? If it is the last section, ask why. I won't speak on an agenda if my bit's right at the end. End of.
That's right. The first thing on any agenda should always be about the people. People first. Doesn't matter if you love robots, always people first. I would like to say thank you very much to Shelley, Jessica, and Sharon, my wonderful panel.
And to Suki.
Yeah, I didn't do that. Thank you. And Anna said we can get off the stage now.
Yeah. Please, thank you so much. Well, another round of applause. I think that's really amazing. And I think it was really good to have that point drummed home again about the role that we all play, right? Whether that's me as a journalist, the people I showcase, the businesses that I showcase in the pages of the Times newspaper, and the role that indeed all of you guys play here. Oh, guys, sorry, Suki. Sorry, guys and girls. So what's a high note to nearly finish this amazing event? Time has really flown, and I hope you've enjoyed it all as much as I have. I'm sure you'll agree it's been a brilliant afternoon. And that is all thanks to this amazing group of women, some of whom are here, and I'm going to embarrass them all by asking them to come up here. Your colleagues from News UK, the BBC and Sky. What an agenda they've pulled together for us. Will you please come up and take a bow, ladies? Thank you so much for pulling this together. Are you all going to go and have a massive glass of wine or something else? A tonic water? Good. Well, thank you very much. It's been a really inspiring afternoon, and well done again for pulling it all together. So remember how we've been talking a lot today about how it's not about talking, it's about action. That brings us to a really special announcement. So we're going to turn the spotlight to you, our MediaTechWomen community, all of you out here in this room, who is really celebrating and championing your success. And for this reason, MediaTechWomen are launching a very exciting awards program, hopefully later this year. Now we've said it out loud, it has to happen, right? That's how it happens. Accountability. We'll be announcing the nomination window soon and the dates for the ceremony. So please follow MediaTechWomen and check the website for further details. So all that remains is for me to thank once more all of our speakers. You were incredible. Thank you to all of you for your brilliant contributions. Thank you to our live stream audience for tuning in. For those of you in the room, do stick around, mingle, have a glass of wine or a sparkling water, whatever it is you'll want, and enjoy mingling with your fellow guests. Thank you and goodbye.